Now available in paperback and Kindle Unlimited, E-Steam: The Sands of Time. It's action and adventure in ancient Egypt in this terrific teen time travel romance. Get your copy of E-Steam: The Sands of Time at your favorite online bookseller today. Disney's Strange World is one of the biggest flops in the studio's history. And as I began to read more about Strange World and the premise for the story, I began to see why the movie Strange World basically failed at the box office and became one of the biggest flops in Disney's history, losing over $100 million at the box office. Now, Strange World was released during Thanksgiving, and it was released during Thanksgiving with next to no advertising. And I believe that Disney didn't want to advertise this movie because when they went to possibly test screen this movie, they knew how much of a turkey this movie was, and they wanted to minimize their losses by not advertising this movie because this movie basically was not showing messages and themes that the studio was confident in. Because when a studio is confident in a film, they are going to be advertising and promoting that movie. And in the case of many Disney animated films, oftentimes during the holiday season, you will see constant ads for that movie because the studio believes in the movie. But in the case of Strange World, I didn't see that the studio had much faith in this movie, hence why we didn't see ads being blitzed at us in November all across the sweeps. Moreover, we didn't see any teaser trailers during the summer because when a studio really has a fall movie they want people to get into, they start promoting that movie early on in teasers and trailers to let people know that that movie is coming. But in the case of Strange World, a movie that cost Disney over $178 million, what we don't see is them going out here advertising one of their big tentpole fall movies, because a fall movie for Disney usually is a box office blockbuster, like Little Mermaid was in '89, like Aladdin was, I believe, in '92 or so, and Beauty and the Beast was in 1991. And for all of those movies, there were major advertising blitzes, but there was no advertising blitz for Strange World, and that was a red flag for me as related to Disney's faith in that story. It clearly showed me that Disney had no faith in Strange World, and I believe they had no faith in Strange World because as they ran the test screenings, they realized that this film wouldn't be appealing to anyone, because it's clear to me that as the screenwriter and director were working on this film, all they were thinking about was identity politics and trying to appeal to a group of people based on diversity checkmark boxes, and they were not thinking about answering the three critical questions every screenwriter like myself has to answer: who is the main character, what do they want, and most importantly, why should we care? Because as I was looking at the trailer for Strange World, I did not see a reason to care about the story of Strange World the way I cared about the story of The Incredibles, because The Incredibles, in contrast, gave us a clear, defined hero in Bob Parr, and in Bob Parr we got a character transformation arc as Bob, who was Mr. Incredible, the superhero, aspired to return to his glory days as a hero, but did not learn to appreciate his family and learn how to be a hero to his family by being a father. There was a story in The Incredibles we could relate to about a man being a hero for his family and leading his family. Unfortunately, in Strange World, there is no real story of family except an extremely dysfunctional one, because the story that's presented there in the main story and in the undertones of the story basically alienates most of the audience because you're just saying extremely negative things about family, and that runs diametrically opposed to what Disney's original mission is, and that is where the film has a problem being marketed to the audience. Now, the Strange World story is supposed to be about this father whose father was an adventurer, and the father got lost during an adventure, and the son decides, instead of wanting to be an adventurer like his father, decides he wants to be this farmer. And as he's this farmer, he's basically turned into a beta male, and beta males are not attractive to audiences because beta males basically are passive, beta males are submissive, and beta males just come across as weak, and you cannot make a beta male a hero of a film because a beta male has unattractive traits that turn off the audience. This was shown to me way back as far as 1986 with Transformers the movie, when they murdered the confident Optimus Prime and replaced him with Rodimus Prime, a guy who doubted himself and was indecisive. And those are traits that people don't want to see in a hero in a movie. So you have the son of Clade, who is the main character of the story, and he's sharing the stage with a black wife and a biracial black son. And with Disney, again, a studio that primarily focuses on white and non-black audiences, this basically was the nail in the coffin for this movie, because you've got a beta white male who is submissive and weak. You've got him in a relationship with a black woman, and he's got a biracial son who is alphabet. And this was, again, the kiss of death for this movie, because what many white and non-black audiences saw was genetic annihilation presented to them in the undertones of that film. And when they saw this white male, who was the son of this explorer, give up because his father got lost, and then just decide to go out here and get involved with a black woman on screen in a swirling relationship, the core audience of white folks said, nah, we ain't with this, because they were basically seeing a white person's greatest fear presented to them on screen as related to genetic annihilation. And they saw the entire bloodline of the Clade family basically ending with this story in Strange World. And again, the world was really weird for most of the core audience of whites, who basically were watching as Disney was presenting a social justice story in between the lines of Strange World. And in between the lines of the Strange World, we were seeing the theme that the social justice types talk about smashing the patriarchy, because we see the Clade family's patriarchy basically destroyed, and we see it destroyed as the son goes out here and swirls it up with a black woman. Then the son goes out here and gets another sexual orientation, and again, the bloodline basically ending. And that's the thing that I believe wound up turning off most of the straight white and non-black audiences as related to the Strange World movie. And all of this identity politics basically turned off most of the audience, who thought they were going to see an adventure movie similar to Treasure Planet, but instead of a movie like Treasure Planet, with a focus on adventure, what we got was a movie which in its undertones was out here smashing the patriarchy, promoting the idea of white genetic annihilation. And when they promoted the idea of white genetic annihilation, whites who have a hair trigger sense on themes like this, they said, nah, we ain't watching this movie, because this movie promotes the idea that whites are going to be erased from society. Again, this is a genetic fear that many white folks have as related to being the dominant. And as they were looking at this movie with an Asian president, and a bloodline which was being erased, all the whiteness being erased out of it. I believe that was a core reason why many people didn't want to go to the strange world, because the strange world really was promoting, again, social justice ideas that turned off a lot of the white viewers, and I believe also was getting ready to turn off many of the black viewers, because in many of these Disney projects, every time you get a black character in a role, what they do is make them a member of the alphabet community, and they do this, again, passively for representation, but aggressively to emasculate the black man. And again, this was not something that was appealing to people as related to Strange World, because many black people saw it as an anti-black narrative, and when they saw it as an anti-black narrative, they decided not to go see this movie. Now, what further exacerbated the problems with Strange World was that Disney could not market this film, not only here in America due to their lack of faith in it, but they could not market this film to foreign audiences, and they could not market it to foreign audiences because many of the foreign audiences, they were not down with the alphabet themes inside of the movie. Many of the countries like China and many of the Arab Muslim countries, they were not looking to support those kind of themes, so Disney was extremely limited in what kind of audience they could sell the Strange World to, and that's why the Strange World basically wound up dying at the box office due to the lack of marketing, the inability of the film's premise to create a strong core character, the dysfunctional undertones in the themes as related to family, and the fact that the film didn't have any real core audience. That was another big problem with Strange World, was that there was no core audience for Strange World. I mean, the social justice types who basically made this film never really had an idea of who their core audience would be. I mean, whenever I write a book like A Easting the Sands of Time, my core audience for that book was black girls. If I write a book like Spellbound, my core audience is black teens. And when I write a book like Temptation of John Haynes, my core audience are black male and black female fantasy readers. So there's a base of customers that people can go out here and want to see this book, read this story. But that problem with Strange World was the social justice types thought, oh, we're going to push diversity, but you didn't have an audience that you wanted to target. And when you're in the business of film and publishing, you want to have a core audience that you want to market and target with your product. So if you have a product, you need a core source audience that you want to sell to. And with Strange World, there was no core audience. I mean, this movie didn't appeal to fantasy fans, didn't appeal to sci-fi fans. It had no real premise that really was on those themes. It was really the film was all about smashing the patriarchy, talking about white male invaders suffering, and talking about how white male invaders are ruining the world. I mean, these are not themes that are appealing to people as related to American history, especially with a lot of white folks. And again, this film didn't really appeal to anyone, so that's why the film failed at the box office and failed in a spectacular fashion. The film should have, as I see it, Strange World should have never been greenlit because the premise was never there as related to a marketable product. And again, if this was a marketable film, it would have had merchandise like Lightyear. Toy companies would have been able to start signing up and saying, hey, we want to produce figures of these characters. And that's another red flag as I saw it for Strange World. I mean, we saw figures for Lightyear. We saw, but we didn't see any figures for movies like Encanto and other movies. But merchandising is something that says, hey, here's something that can appeal to the kids. Here's something that we can appeal to the customer. It's something that can get the kids to really want to remember this movie, and we didn't get that with Strange World. And again, if you're spending this kind of money, you're going to want some licensing and merchandising, but there's nothing to license and merchandise because there's no core audience to market to. Even Princess and the Frog, for as lame as that movie was, did have a way to market Tiana dolls to people, but when I looked at Strange World, there was nothing you could market or sell outside to merchandise because the Strange World, the only thing it had going for it was its symbolic representations of diversity, but it didn't have an actual story that made you care. It didn't have a story that got you excited, and it didn't have a story that the studio had faith in. So this is why The Strange World was one of the biggest flops as related to Disney's animated division, because it wasn't not a well thought out animated project. No, it was something that I believe was rushed and slapped together in order to try to pander to the social justice types, the same social justice types who watch pirated versions of movies at Starbucks on their Wi-Fi as they're sipping on a 99-cent tea. These are the same people who will sit there for hours inside of a Starbucks. They are looking to get to watch this movie for free, and they're not looking to spend $15 like many of the kids out here who are desperate for their own pop culture, like kids got with The Incredibles. That's the big difference between The Strange World and The Incredibles, because The Incredibles had a clear premise. It had a clear story with superheroes that you could relate to, clear superheroes that could easily be merchandised, a story that made you care about Bob Parr. But with the Clades, we didn't get that story. No, we got identity politics and social justice rammed through our throats. And again, we got no real story, and that's why this movie was a real failure, because Disney didn't have enough faith in it to sell it outside of the US to try to get that 3 times over as related to the huge budget. And then Strange World, again, was a colossal failure due to the lack of leadership under Bob Iger, because this film was possibly greenlit by him, and he thought, oh, I'll be able to appeal to the social justice crowd. But the social justice crowd, they make a lot of noise on Twitter. They don't go out here and buy movie tickets. No, the social justice types don't buy movie tickets, but they will push these anti-American agendas inside of films like Strange World, and then wonder why these movies fail, because the world that they live in is strange. And it's strange because they put identity politics over story, and they put identity politics over story because they want empty symbolic representation and a lot of flash and no substance. And that's possibly what Strange World was all about, and that movie wound up failing colossally for Disney. And this will possibly be the film that leads to Disney not wanting to take risks, but the problem was they took the wrong type of risks overall, because in Japan, with anime, they take risks all the time as related to story, and they have great success with their stories because they know how to take calculated risks with stories. They know how to approach different story models for anime movies, and that's why anime is surpassing American animation at this point, because they are willing to take the right kind of risks, not trying to overcompensate like Bob Iger did with Strange World, hoping to pander to people, because Strange World is the ultimate result of pandering to an audience when you don't have confidence in your product. In order for your product to have success, you have to believe in what you wrote and what you produced. You have to believe it is the very best. And when I look at what was on the screen for Strange World, I didn't see any sort of confidence. I didn't see any sort of pride. I didn't see any sort of standard. No, I saw an animated film made by a studio that took its audience for granted, thought they could pander to the audience instead of selling to it, because what I saw was pandering. And again, pandering is coming from a position of weakness, and a creator cannot come from a position of weakness if they hope to sell their story to the reader. If you really believe in your product, you gotta come with all of your confidence, you gotta come with all of your heart and all of your passion. That's the only way you're going to be able to sell to an audience. And again, Disney has lost its heart and soul and has its confidence broken, because when they started making films like Turning Red, Lightyear, and This Strange World, they went into a strange direction similar to the one Disney went in the late 70s, where they were taking risks, but taking the wrong kind of risk, because they were overcompensating for the poor sales as related to their previous movies. And again, you can't come with no confidence when you're taking a risk. You have to believe in what you're doing, and that's why you take calculated risks, because when you take a calculated risk, you may do something like I did when I was writing books like The Thetas. That was a challenge for me, and I said I want to do a story about one character from their perspective as they experienced that sorority, and that was a challenge. Or you may try a different genre like I did with Eternal Night, where that was a challenge, writing a vampire story and taking a trip back to 1994 and really trying to go back and see, hey, can I really take on this whole different genre of horror? And that's a challenge, again, calculated risk. Or you do something like when I did with East-Team Sands of Time, where you want to take a different take on princesses, where you're going to show, oh, this is a princess of ancient Egypt, and you're going to show the role of women in ancient Egypt. As you're writing this time travel story, you're going to show, again, the humanity of this character during these ancient times, and you're going to show how the role of women had a major role in things, and you're also going to show how love is something that transcends time. Again, want to try to do something different as related to story, want to do something different as related to characters. You want to do things that are different. You're going to appeal, but you have a core audience in place. Like I had for Eternal Night, I had horror fans, and I also had black women and women in general as an audience. For the Thetas, I had a core audience of women that I wanted to target. And for Sands of Time, I wanted to target women and little girls and the guys who like fantasy. Again, core audiences. These are things that Disney didn't think about as related to Strange World. And again, they are wondering, why is it so strange? No one was interested in this film, but nobody's interested in a film where there's no hero I can root for, nobody who's confident and believes in themselves. I mean, part of writing a story is you want people to root for your hero, and it was hard to root for anyone in Strange World after reading the synopsis, because if this screenplay were to come to me and I was running a movie studio, I would be chucking it in the paper shredder, because it's just absolute garbage, and it wouldn't have been about the identity politics based on the merits of the story. Strange World wasn't strong enough to put millions of dollars in, and when I look at this film, I can see why this film flopped, and I see why it flopped because the problem wasn't with the things as related to animation. No, it wasn't about the genre of animation. The problem was you had a writer submit a story that they didn't believe in, and if you don't believe in your story, you're not going to be able to convince me to buy a movie ticket for it. Now, if you want to pick up my homage to Disney princesses, East-Team, The Sands of Time, you can find that book on Amazon.com, on Kindle for and paperback. And you can, if you have Kindle Unlimited, you can read Sands of Time for free, and you can also read Eternal Night for free because it's also on Kindle Unlimited. And if you want to pick up some of my other stories in the Isis series, the East-Team series, the John Haynes series, and the books of the Spinsterella trilogy, and the novel The Thetas, and A Recipe for Success, you can find all those books on Amazon.com in paperback and Kindle format. You can also find those books at other online booksellers like Smashwords, the iBookstore, and Google Play. And if you want to see me make more videos taking Disney to the barbecue, you can donate to my Patreon, my PayPal, or my Cash App by clicking the links in the description box. That's all I have to say for this video. You can comment, rate, and subscribe. Now available in paperback and e-readers, Spinsterella. Discover the dark side of love in this goth and lovely romance with Spinsterella. Get Spinsterella in paperback and e-readers at your favorite online bookseller today.